Good evening, everyone. So when Tracy and I were considering this evening's event and thinking about what it is that makes being a teacher at Sir John Deane'S so fantastic and what it is that makes being a student at Sir John Deane'S even better here, we spent a little bit of time thinking about what exactly does make our DNA so special. And we came down to three core ideas. Essentially, what we think makes Sir John Deane'S such an outstanding organisation for both the staff and also for the students are the way which we teach, the way which we practice assessments in order to get the very best for you, and also the way which we support students the whole time that they're here with us. So what we'd like to do this evening is go through each of those in turn and give you a few examples of how we practice that on a daily basis at Sir John Deane'S. So if we start with the first one, and we start with how we teach, if we simplify it a little bit, there's two main things that we do at Sir John Deane'S. So the first is we always begin by thinking about what's really important for the student. So when we're looking at a sequence of lessons, or if we're looking at an individual lesson, or even if we're just looking at an activity within a lesson, we always start with the end in mind. So our primary focus is what do we really want the students to leave the lesson categorically knowing, and what do we really want the students to be able to do when they leave our lessons. And once we know that, we're then able to move on to the second part of teaching and learning at Sir John Deane'S, which is that we just keep it simple. So we've all had that presentation where we've been in and we've seen a really charismatic and energetic presenter that's got a lot of ideas and a lot of anecdotes, and they fill the room with a lot of noise, and it's great fun to be in there, but as you leave, the core message sometimes gets lost. So what we try to do at Sir John Deane'S is we have the discipline as expert A-level teachers to really think about the sequencing of our lesson, the planning of our lesson, and what we say within our lessons. So when me and Tracy were talking about this, we talked about Mr. Griffiths, who's our head of mathematics. And as a superb professional that he is, when Michael goes and plans his lessons, he looks at them in such intricate detail that everything he says is deliberate. So what he's doing is he's channeling his students throughout his lesson towards that end goal of what he's trying to get across to them. And they love that, because what the students are able to do is they're able to anticipate what's coming next. They're able to follow Michael with such great precision, and they have the confidence that they're going to really understand the depth of mathematics. And I know, Tracy, you've got a couple of examples from psychology that you want to talk through.
Absolutely. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to share what we do in our classrooms that makes Sir John Deane'S Sixth Form College so special. And a key important message is all of our teachers are experts. We specialise in our subjects. And that really does allow us the time to also master the art of memory. So we utilise our working memory when we're planning what we do in our lessons. So as Chris mentioned, we start with the end in mind. We ask ourselves the question, what don't our students know at the beginning of a lesson that they absolutely will know by the end of that lesson? So we have the opportunity to really plan and focus on how we get you there. Now, one way we do that here is by creating what we call learning milestones. Essentially, they're lesson goals, where we want you to be in that lesson. So we really put a lot of thought into the sequencing of how to build knowledge and how to build skills. So by the end of the lesson, each and every student leaves confident. And actually, the very best lessons are when very complex A-level theory has been delivered by the teacher, but our students actually find it quite easy almost because they underestimate just how well that lesson has been crafted. One way we do this in psychology is we chunk the information to utilise our working memory. So we break down very complex theory into very accessible, manageable ways for our students to access it and leave really confident at the end of the lesson. And I would say, if any of you have had the privilege to see the fantastic work that our art students are capable of producing, you'd almost be forgiven, wouldn't you, to think that actually these students are super talented and it came naturally to them. And you would be forgiven for thinking that, but actually it's our art teachers like Mr. Neald and Mr. Davies who have crafted that lesson so expertly to break down very complex skills into very manageable sequence, so the final product simply is an exceptional piece of work. And that really does take an awful lot of planning. And that is something that we see right across the college in every subject. Art is a beautiful visual demonstration of that, but we see this in lessons right across in all of our A-level subjects. And that's one way our lessons are so magical here at Sir John Deane's Sixth Form College. Maybe, Chris, you could share another example from maybe economics?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'd just like to reiterate exactly what you're saying about chunking lessons and the sequencing and the order in which you do lessons. So one of the things that we've had a real pride in doing in economics is whenever we're looking at one of those complex theories where students are required to make those really difficult complex links between some content that they already know, but also content that they don't yet know, one of the things we've become really disciplined at doing is just having that moment before we start the lesson to think about what is it that they already know, but potentially we can't take for granted they might have forgotten. And therefore, we've actually got to the stage now where, with those really complex theories, we probably spend quite an indulgent amount of time, so 20, 25 minutes, making sure that we fully recap the information that they need to know to access the more detailed theory that's coming. And actually, by doing that, what it does for us is it first of all allows us to ensure that they're revising, because the students get an opportunity to go back over that content and really secure it. But also, by bringing it back to the front of their memory, we're also able to give them a really solid foundation for that lesson so that they can move through the rest of the lesson that little bit quicker. And at the same time, they can get that little bit deeper because they've got that really solid foundation. They can really understand the new content that's coming at them and the complexity of that content. And that's what they really love, because when they can start to really analyse the economics, that's when the subject comes to life and they become true economists and they really enjoy the subject. So I know you had another one about assessment that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I think assessment it's pivotal to what we do here, isn't it? And when we assess our students, we very carefully plan in our sequence and delivery exactly what we're going to assess and exactly why and when we're going to assess. Now, assessment in lessons is actually really important because, as you know, we start with the end goal in mind, and that for you is going to complete exams at the end of the 2 years. So what we provide you with the opportunity in class here is practicing, applying that core precious knowledge to the exam. So by the end of the 2 years, you enter your exams really comfortable and confident, knowing exactly what to do. So we almost use our in-class assessments almost like we're training our students, we're building stamina. So we're building stamina to be able to write under time conditions, think under pressure, and just really create those automated, excellent habits that at the end of the 2 years when we go into the exam hall, we're confident, we just deliver because we've practiced and created those really good habits. So there's actually the crafting of the assessment schedule, Chris, if you would maybe talk about that and how that's deliberately scheduled and the types of assessment that we do to really build that confidence for those final exams.
Absolutely. With our assessment schedule, it's one of the things that we've evolved recently over the last few years. And whilst the majority of our assessments are still formal, marked, traditional assessments under time conditions, which are fantastic because they give students real clarity over where they are. They get that working at grade so they can measure their progress and they get that confidence from that. But we're also very conscious of the fact that sometimes grades can be a little bit of a distraction because sometimes they're a little bit disappointing, sometimes they're absolutely what you'd want. And sometimes they prevent students from really engaging in that detailed feedback and the commentary that the teacher's written on the assessment. So what we've also introduced is we have a good number of what we call practice assessments. And these are, again, timed condition assessments. The big difference is, though, that we deliberately don't mark them. So the idea behind these assessments is because we don't have to grade them and mark them, we can provide the feedback that little bit quicker while it's still fresh in the mind of the student. And we can also ensure that we're actually coming up with really detailed, innovative and engaging ways of providing feedback so that we're using feedback more proactively to get the students to move forwards and really so that you can get the great development that you're here for. So I know, Tracy, you use the visualizer really, really well.
Oh, I do. I'll show you the visualizer, actually. It's a very simple piece of equipment where a student's work is put under the actual screen, so it projects for everybody in the classroom to see. Now, feedback for me is one of the most exciting points of the lesson because it simply doesn't get better than here. And that is because teachers are experts and they know exactly what the examiners want. and exactly how to communicate that to you during the feedback in the lesson. So you go into that exam under no illusions, you know exactly how to perform and well. So I like to use the visualizer, and every student has the opportunity to have their work shared. So we very much make sure we sample a variety. And it's wonderful because we get to celebrate the fantastic work that the students are completing under time conditions. And it gives us experts the opportunity to give you clear feedback and celebrate exactly why certain answers have achieved the marks. But also celebrate mistakes. The visualizer is a wonderful opportunity to help us learn. What we know here is that mistakes provide powerful information. So if we get to share each other's work and identify what could that answer have done to get even better, we learn and we progress as we go through. And it simply doesn't get better than that. And many of our teachers were examiners, we're senior examiners, so the feedback you get here is of the highest quality. So I'm a fan of the visualizer, Chris, and I know many of our subjects like sociology and English, we really do love the visualizer, but there's many other ways of feedback if you'd like to share what you enjoy doing.
Yes, I mean, the visualizer is one of the core things across college that you'll see in every department. But one of the things that a number of departments also do is and something that we've adopted in economics, is the use of common error sheets. So what we do with our practice assessments is we'll scan in all the student work, and then we'll go through and we'll look for those errors, those misconceptions, those omissions that are common to the most students. Because what we've discovered is that a large number of students make very similar, if not the same, mistakes. So what we can do is, once we've identified those mistakes, we can identify paragraphs that are pretty much perfect, but they give a really good example of that particular mistake. And we can print off lots of different paragraphs with slightly different errors in them. And then we can give that as a task to the students to really hunt for the errors. And they absolutely love it, because what they're able to do is it stops being personal, because it's not their work, and it becomes this absolute hunt for the errors within the work. And once they discover the error, because they've had to work so hard for it, it really sticks in the mind. And therefore, you remember it, you go to that exam, and you definitely don't make that same mistake. You don't make that omission, and you don't have that misconception. You're also able to reflect on your own work and do the same. So it's a really good way of using feedback that little bit more proactively and with a lot more energy, so that students really do get that progress that we're looking for in the classroom. And I know you had one more.
It does. It sounds fantastic, and essentially tied into feedback, it's a really important. It's a very important way and opportunity for your teachers to get to know you. Now, we celebrate you as an individual. We pride ourselves on understanding your motivational triggers, your drives, and what gets you to be successful. So yes, we will celebrate during the feedback your strengths, which is always great to do, but we can also spot your weaknesses as well. And that is absolutely fine. Some students will excel in some areas, but they'll have their lows in others, and that is perfectly normal. But what I'm extremely proud of is the teaching staff here in how they go the extra mile. So if we do pick up on that you're struggling during feedback or an in-class activity, we catch you. We put on additional support. Our teachers always go the extra mile. They don't leave their teaching and learning in the lesson. We run additional support sessions. We support you one-to-one and give you as much help and feedback as you need. So that tracking and intervention really is exceptional here, and something as a teacher I'm extremely proud of working here. And it doesn't just happen in the classroom, does it, Chris? Maybe you can share what we do to support students working at home as well.
No, 2020 has obviously been a year of adaptation for all of us, and it's been no different in education. So one of the things that we've introduced this year, and Tracy, you've been absolutely integral in this, is our new online platform of Microsoft Teams. So within Microsoft Teams, we've got a new way of providing really structured homeworks that are really engaging to our students. And we've also been able to support those self-isolating students with really detailed, thorough resources, activities, structure to their home learning, and also live Microsoft calls so that they get that connection with college even when they're self-isolating. So we're really confident, I suppose, as an organisation, that no matter what happens in the new year, even if we do have another period of remote learning, so John Deane'S is absolutely well placed with the right infrastructure, the right professionals to ensure that the same outstanding quality of teaching and learning happens both within college but also potentially outside of college, which is a great place for all of us to be and should give you confidence.
Absolutely. It simply doesn't get better than this. And I'm very proud to be part of the Sir John Deane Sixth Form College community. Now, we could sit and chat all evening and share what our teaching and learning strategies are all about, but hopefully we've given you a flavour of our DNA here, but I'm now going to hand you back over to Mr. Bowden to continue with the evening.